Good evening. That is me in the photo taken, don't know where, doing what I'm going to talk about. So I'm not sure whether I'm actually field referee there or competition director, but the idea of this seminar is just to give you a bit more of an oversight of who does what at an athletics event. My name's Sue Morn. I'm I was going to say level 4 field official. Also very recently become a world para official and a bronze international official. So don't know what that all involves yet, but I've been involved in the sport for longer than I care to mention, but probably over 30 years as an official, and worked my way up through to the rankings. So I've done quite a lot of the jobs that we're going to talk about and worked across some of the disciplines. I don't mind, it's an hour seminar session today. I don't mind you asking questions. Put your hand up. I'll see if I can see them. But if not, we'll have some real time for questions at the end. See how long this takes. But hopefully, bearing in mind that on the call today, we have people that are trainees that are just literally coming into the sport, right through to fellow sort of level 4 officials, and there is an ITO photo finish judge on board. So if you've got any questions on photo finish, I will defer to one of my colleagues. Okay, so we're going to start off by just doing a quick idea of what we're going to cover today. So we're just going to talk about the various disciplines involved, so we're all on the same page of what that means. I'm going to talk about a competition team, and in this case, the case of Welsh athletics. So I appreciate on the call, we've got people from Scottish athletics, English athletics, I'm not sure if they've got any Irish on board, and some from Welsh that officiate in Wales. So each of those home country federations have probably a competitions team. So I'm going to give you an overview of their role in organising events. But more importantly, what do us, the volunteers, do? So some of these are more management roles, and I'm just going to give you an overview. There are more courses available as you progress up the ladder to do more work on these. The competition director, meeting manager, technical manager and the team, referees, and some of the other roles that you may come across as you're out and about in your officiating world, and some questions and answers. So I'm going to try technology. My first.
Okay, thanks.
My first attempt at technology didn't work because the poll stayed there. So if you can either use your phone to scan that QR code, it will take you to a website, or you can just go to the website and type in menti.com using that code. Okay, what I'd like you to do to start with is just, there you go, list the event disciplines that you're aware of. Okay, just so you get a chance to put up to 5. You might not know 5, but just put them up there. Okay. Still moving through. If you've done, some of you will have done word clouds like this before. The bigger the word, the more people are putting that in. So let's see who we've got amongst us. We've probably got quite a few field officials, track officials, probably the comfortable zone. Yeah, announce, good. Timekeeping, starters, call room. Okay. I'm going to go on to the next question, and don't worry if you don't get this right, because as Alison, one of the colleagues on the call, this was in a recent exam that I sat as a question. So it's just to try and give you an idea of some of the different things and different roles, and we're going to go into a bit more detail, but we just thought we'd start off with a quiz. So there we go, that's and I'll come back to some of the event disciplines in a minute. So what I'm going to do now is move on to the next. Ooh. So which of the following is not a duty of the competition director? Do they ensure all athletes register, do you think? Do they agree the call room schedule, be present at the start of the event, or ensure competition runs to schedule? What do you think? Okay. The answer for that one is the role of the competition director. I'll go through the three that actually are a role of the competition director. Is they feed into the call room schedule. They should also be there at the start of every event, and they should also ensure that the competition runs to schedule. They don't have anything to do with athletes registering. That's someone else's job. Okay, let's see if we can do another question now. Gonna let me? Right, another question coming up. Similar, what is the following is not the duty of the technical manager? Is it about ensuring the athletes are in the correct lane before each takeover zone? Supervise and check the throw sectors, ensuring the sand is properly prepared in the chump pits, checking the weights of implements for the competition. So I think a lot of you are going for ensuring the athletes are in the correct lane before the takeover zone of the 4x100 meters relay. I think I'll say it's nudging up there. Okay. So spot on for those that got it right. The technical manager is responsible for those other three. So, and as I said, we'll give you a bit more detail on that in a minute. Supervising and checking the setting out the throw sector, checking the pits, preparing the sand, and checking the implements before the competition. And whether it's technical manager or the technical manager's team. So yeah, that's the right answer. Okay, just thought I'd just have a go at that just to get you in the thought about what different people do. So I'm just going to stop sharing that and go back to the presentation a minute. Hopefully get this right. We're going to go into present mode. Find the button. There we go. Okay, so we covered the disciplines before. So most of you have got these. So some of you have mentioned javelin or shot. Those are actually events within the field. So we have call room, and they're listed in this order of alphabetical because I'd be putting field at the top every time because that's my discipline. But I put them in alphabetical order just so that there's no preference shown for any of the disciplines. Not one is better than the other. Call room, field, photo finish, the starts team, technical team, timekeepers, track, and the non-technical roles. Okay. So each of them, you may work for many years just in the field team and you may never engage with someone from the track team. So this is just an idea of what some of those other people do, but also who oversees these and pulls all this information and pulls the events together. So if we're talking about competitions, I said the home countries have staff in the offices, usually who do a lot of the work pre-competitions. So I've just given you an idea of some of the things they're involved in. So for example, before the event, they'd make sure the license is in place, making sure the venues and everything are booked. They'd accept the specific competition conditions, and it may vary if it's a league meeting, if it's a national championships. Some of the things are different for something like a diamond league. They may have different rounds, number of rounds. So that would be determined pre the event, usually by the competition organizer. They'd invite the officials and all the people to support the event, liaise with technology providers, things like the photo finish equipment, the start equipment, maybe the EDM machines in the field. And maybe in Wales, we have something called a competition organisers group, where the chiefs come together to agree various things before the meeting. On the day, they'd be responsible for sort of supporting the setup of the venue, banner, advertising, as you can see at the bottom there, from Welsh Athletics, collate and publish the live results as they come in and manage presentation of medals, And then there's also work to be done after the event in terms of getting feedback and, very importantly, paying the expenses if any are due. That's the competition team that's usually sort of behind the scenes from the office, shall we say. And at some events, not all events, will have maybe a competition director. So if you're going along to your local junior league, you probably won't have a competition director. It does tend to be at the slightly bigger meetings. So in Wales, the Welsh Championships, international events, we have someone that oversees this. So they liaise with the Welsh Athletics or the regional office, and they help input into the timetable and drafting of the call room schedule. So it's usually done jointly, depending on the number of entries, etc., and making sure it all fits together. On the day, I think we've done this a little bit in the quiz, they make sure the meetings run to time. They give permission if we can start events early, make sure that if there's lineups and presentations, they're there to liaise with the announcer. They're there on the ground resolving technical problems, and they may be in communication with key officials throughout the event, finding out why things are delayed or why things are not started, or giving permission to start, or dealing with queries that come up. And they may also agree sort of the routes that officials will take to get to their event sites, or so for example, how would you get from where the officials room is to the high jump event? And how would you take athletes to that event to start the event? So they'd confirm all those routes on the day. And then again, there's always paperwork after the event to complete any meeting reports. Okay, next up we have the meeting manager. So again, they liaise with the competition team as well. Now their job is to make sure all the officials have reported for duty. They have an oversight of the welfare, refreshments, expenses, giving out kit in the officials room usually, distributing things like the radios, the cards, start lists, deal with the accident forms if they happen, make sure everything's signed off. If there's records at any events, they will go around and make sure the relevant people and the paperwork is complete. And they will maintain that sort of trackside presence, but also then supporting the officials. And I put an asterisk next to this one, so they're ensuring the correct conduct competition. Now, all these descriptions will come up are in the athletics rule book, and some of them vary slightly from what we do in the UK as to what's described in the rule book. But these are the main things that you would expect of a meeting manager. And again, you may have a meeting manager who meets and greets people at a local league meeting, depending on the number of officials, but probably at a regional championships or a national championships, you would definitely have a meeting manager. Okay. So, not just one person, we have a technical team. And so again, at large meetings, you'd have a technical manager, an equipment officer, and clerk or clerks, of course. At your local league meeting, you might have one man and a dog running around like a headless chicken, trying to put all the equipment out, make sure it's all in place, and make sure it's all put back at the end. So these very much depend on the level of competition. But I think it's important that you know about these roles, particularly for those individuals who are progressing up the pathway. It's more than likely, particularly on the field, that you will come across a clerk of the course. They may be the ones that deliver the shot puts to the site, the event site, so that you can actually start the event on time. Clerks of the course on the track make sure the hurdle heights are set at the right dimension. They may manage the brake line on the 800 meters. So also, as you're progressing up your officiating journey, anybody that is a track or a field judge has to get a clerk of course report to go from level 3 to level 4. In Wales, we try and introduce people to the clerk of course role as early as we can, just to give them experience of what it involves working with an experienced technical manager. So the technical team as a whole sometimes may carry out checks of the venue and equipment before the event to make sure that there's nothing amiss, that everything is there, all the lines are in place, all the sectors are, you know, adequate, all the pits are okay. Then, depending on the timetable, they'll probably feed into where the field events are going to be located. Is the long jump going to be on the back straight? Which shot circle are you going to use? Which discus or hammer cage are you going to use? And they develop a schedule for their team on the day. And I'll show you a little image of that in a minute. On the day, the team would make sure that all the event sites are ready and equipped with the relevant equipment. They'd make sure the implements, the shots, discus, javelins, the right ones are available for the age group of the competition. So if it's a senior men's shot, make sure that the 7.26 kilos available rather than a 4 kilo, which isn't going to be any use. And then at the end of the event, they want to make sure that the event is cleared up as soon as possible, and if needs be, ready for the next event to come on site. And also at the end of the event, the obligatory paperwork, and they may advise the stadium or the England Athletics, Welsh Athletics, of any repairs or any future technical needs that would make that a better venue so that future events can be held more efficiently. This is just a snip from a clerk of the course schedule, that if you're working as a clerk of the course, a tech manager may prepare for you, and it tells you that you need to be there, you know, 8 o'clock in the morning, but they're starting to set up the landing sector, 9 o'clock. The event doesn't start till 11, but you need to make sure that the vertical plane is set up, make sure the sponge is in place to cover the stands, make sure that the competition bars and lifters are there. So usually a tech manager might develop a basic timetable for you, or it might be really detailed depending on the level of the event and the number of competitors. So one of our tech managers there, Chris Price, putting the hurdles out, we're checking the hurdles indoors. The tech manager oversees that team. They have oversight to make sure that the track, runways, circles, arcs, sectors, landing area, equipment and implements are in accordance with the rules for the competitions, making sure it all complies with this. There's lots more information on tech manager and checking equipment. Got some at the bottom of this slide, but they'll go in and make sure that the diameter of the shot is exactly right, that the length of the hammer cable is absolutely right, the handle is right. So they are responsible for all those details. They're making sure that the equipment and implements are as agreed at any pre-meeting. So again, at a higher level meeting, you might have a technical delegate, a competition director who sets out and agrees where all the placements are going to be. They're making sure that the presentation of the competition areas, so they may make sure that there's technical equipment in place, the EDMs are set up and calibrated, making sure the sector lines are out, and just making sure they've liaised probably with any of the technical providers to make sure that it's all connected. And checking and marking personal implements, so it's not just the competition ones that come from the stadium, but when people come to bring their own implements. And also they may check the certification of the stadium itself, of the equipment, of the facility itself, to make sure it meets the standards. An equipment officer, probably a bit of a rarity for many of us. I don't know whether we actually use them in Wales. I don't know if there's anyone on from Scotland, whether regularly you have an equipment officer. It would be at a high level meeting. And this is where equipment is checked to the nth degree. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen at every meeting, but at the Commonwealth Games, there's one person checking every single implement and measuring diameters, calibration, etc. So this is their job. So again, they would work with the technical manager, making sure the venue equipment is prepared, making sure the personal implements are checked and marked. Athletes are informed of any rejections. So if they don't meet the right length, diameter, weight, they'd talk to the athletes and say, unfortunately, you're unable to use this in competition because of X, Y, and Z. Helping with the event sites being cleared after competitions. And if there's any records, they'd make sure that the implements come back in and are weighed, checked again to make sure nothing has happened to them since the time they left the technical room on competition site, to make sure they are still legal, to verify that record. and that will be part of the work the meeting manager will do to make sure that that bit is signed off on the record form. Clerk of course, there's a picture of a wind gauge at the bottom, so they may be responsible for putting that out, making sure the event sites are prepared, digging the pits, equipment and implements made available at the correct time. So it's not at a league meeting, they may just get put out at the beginning of the day if you're the only person there. At a higher level meeting, it put out the 7.2 shots for the right time of the competition. You take them back in afterwards and take out the shots ready for the next competition. This is making sure they're removed on completion of the event. And then making sure that implements used are returned to the equipment officer for rechecking. Oh, sorry. So for those that are aspiring to go up the officiating ladder and think, oh, I've been asked to be clerk of the course, never done that before. The advice is contact your technical manager, find out who is going to be the technical manager, check when you're required to attend. You might not live local to the venue, you might not be able to go there beforehand, but you might want a conversation with them. You might want to find out what time you need to be there on the day of the event. Looking back at that schedule before, the first thing that they were doing was 8 o'clock in the morning. So tech teams usually are there early, very early in the day, or even in some events the day before, to make sure the sectors are ready to be marked out. You'll often leave later than other officials as well, because you're there clearing up at the end. This, I know it won't work for you. I think Zoe, if she's still on the call, if not, I can put it in the chat later. One of UKA's or England Athletics officials, Steve Marshall, he has a website which has all sorts of really useful information if you're really into being the technical side of the sport, tips on measuring equipment. So it's worth delving in there if, for example, you think this summer you're going to be a clerk of the course for this first time. There's loads of useful information all brought together in the same place. So I'll make sure that that's put in the chat if someone reminds me at the end if Zoe's not able to do it. Okay, so quite a few of you have probably been at an event, and one of the people you might have come across is a referee. So we're just going to run through what is a referee, what's their job at an event, and what are the different types of referees. So we have, going back to the list of disciplines, we have referees for each of these. So a call room referee, and we'll cover call room in a bit. Combined events referee. So at competitions where there was a decathlon, heptathlon, in high level competitions, there is a referee that oversees that event from start to finish. So they will follow the athletes through each of those events and be responsible for making sure judgment calls together with the on the ground officials during each of those events. Field referees, track referees, quite often most of you will have come across those. Start referee. We don't have referees in photo finish. I don't know why. We have chief photo finish judges, chief race walk judges, and chief timekeepers. But they are the leads in those discipline teams and the go-to people for anything related to that discipline that you're involved in. And they are all, as I said, if you want to read about them, page 36, competition rules 13, all of those descriptions are in there, as well as quite a few other roles that exist. So some bedtime reading for you. So what is the role of a referee? So they will produce discipline-specific duty sheets. So if you're a field judge, you'll turn up and you'll have a list that will say at 10 o'clock, your first event that you're going to be judging on, you're going to be spiking in the long jump pit at 10 o'clock. So it will tell you your schedule through the day. On track, it will be you're on the bend watching lanes 3, 4, 5, or you're in position 10, and they can, please correct me any track judges, or you're on head-on on the 100-meter straight, or you're watching the line of the hurdles. So there'll be a duty sheet that will be given to you at the start of the day, telling you what your role is for each of those events. And also photo finish, if Alison wanted to butt in, she could tell you what will be on a duty sheet for photo finish, and starts, they would have one as to who's going to start which events, starters, assistants, which ones are going to sort of take on which role to get the athletes on the line. But everyone, each referee or chief will have a duty sheet, which you'll collect when you usually register with the meeting manager, and that'll give you your work schedule for the day. And I say produce discipline specific duty sheets, it's probably version 57 by the time you get your copy, because usually there's so many changes of officials and timings and things, and even on the day there's changes. So that field referee will make the changes on the day if there's people don't turn up, so your duties may change. Ultimately, they are responsible for ensuring the rules and regulations are observed. They'll rule on any protest or objection during the event. They're not there to act as a judge or umpire, but they may, depend if they see something that someone else misses, they may overrule a decision of a judge. They have the right to be able to do that. They can warn or exclude athletes guilty of unsporting behaviour, and again in the rule book there's all details about that. And they may sort of make a decision, and then based on some other evidence they can change their mind and reconsider that decision. So oversight of the sort of an event or the overall competition. So in the UK for the British Championships, you'd have possibly 2 field referees overseeing being at event sites during the competition. Track referee, you'd have one. At a higher level, at an international event, there would be an event referee for each event on the field, and there'd be a sort of referee on each event making the judgment call. At your level, you'd usually turn up and there'd probably be 1 or 2 referees at most of the events that you're going to in your own specific discipline. So I just wanted to touch on the athlete's journey because it does impact on some of the other roles that exist. So when an athlete turns up, they'll register to let people know that they're here. So they'll sign in, and there'll be certain times set. So if their first event is 10 o'clock, they may need to report 90 minutes before that. So they need to register for that time to actually make sure they're recorded on the list. And we know that out of the 30 people that entered, 20 have turned up. We now need to work out what we're going to do with those 20 people in the event they're going in. So they may be put seeding. Now that means sorting them by their best times into random draws of lanes for races, or the order that they'll appear on the list for field events. So there'll be a team of individuals, or done by computer, that will seed the athletes and sort them into the heats and the competitions that they're going to compete in. So that sort of happens behind the scenes. Once they've registered, at a certain time before the event, there'll be a call room schedule. Again, at a local league meeting, there might not be a call room, but start to get to regional champs or national champs, and particularly international events, there's somewhere where athletes need to go to, and I'll explain call room in a bit more detail in a minute. So the athlete needs to go to call room at a certain time, and they'll leave call room to go onto the competition site. And there are officials who help with athlete registration, or volunteers, non-technical roles. There are people that help with seeding, and there are officials who work in call room to supervise that area. So what are those roles? So registration is where all the athletes go to register to compete. They'll have reporting times, as I said, and that's where their race numbers will probably get issued, race numbers or names. Seeding, the heats, race lanes are arranged, and the order of jumping is arranged. Call room. So this is where the athletes get their kit checked. So it makes sure that they have the right clothing, that they've got the right club vest, that they've got the right shoes with the right spikes. And again, lots of information in this book, that they need 11, maximum 11 spikes, a certain length, usually 9 mil, but it might vary depending on the type of track, whether it's indoor, outdoor, on the surface of the track. And that's what the call room judges will generally do. But the level of checks will vary depending on the level of competition. So at Olympic Games, everything will be checked. Their bags will be checked, make sure they're not taking anything out. At Welsh Championships, we might just be checking that they turn up and tell them what lane they're in and tell them not to use their mobile phone on site. We might check their spikes and make sure that they're legal. But it will vary. But they are responsible for making sure all athletes are present from when they registered to when they come into call room. Because some athletes do drop out between that phase, and there's implications if athletes register and then don't turn up on site for future competition. So that has to be logged and recorded. Call room at the moment, we called it earlier, is it a separate discipline? It is, but there isn't a course currently available for call room, but one is under development and is due to be launched very soon. I don't know whether if Zoe's still around.
Yeah, I don't have confirmation of the date, but obviously it will be launched, and it'll be an online module that you can do at your own pace on the athletics hub.
There you go. So yeah, so this is a picture at the bottom of a call room. This is indoor athletics. So they vary. I think this is probably during COVID, the spacing of the chairs. But the athletes come in, they sit down. All the athletes that are for a certain discipline. You can see a couple of officials there. They'll have their names checked and all their details checked. An official will come from a field event or a track event, or a starters assistant will come and collect those athletes and then take them to the event site. Okay, so there are roles that you might not be involved in at the moment, but you might want to get involved in. The call room is one of those that you get face to face with all the athletes. And I think there's probably quite a few people on the call who've done call room. So I know Sue Alvey's done it at the British Champs. Last minute call in. There's probably a few others if you want to know more. I'm sure they'll be able to tell you. I was due to do it at the British Champs this summer. I've had to cancel. Results. So there's also, after the events, we talk about they compete, the athletes compete. So the results, some people now have online where they're doing it straight into a laptop and it's going straight onto one of the online results systems. We've got Overtrack in Wales, and I think it's Roster in England, and there's probably others that I'm not sure what Scotland uses at the moment. Some it's still paper-based. So someone needs to take that list of who's crossed the line first, make sure it's put into the computer, and then it can be registered. And then ultimately some of those results end up in Power of 10, or they're used to then determine who qualifies for the next round, who are the first four that pass, first past qualifiers. And then that data is used to work out the future qualification rounds as well. So there are volunteers, we call them the non-technical team, that oversee the results side of things as well. So these happen behind the scenes and you may sort of be aware of them, but there's a lot of roles that people can get involved in, which just to make you aware of what makes up the family of athletics and the team of officials that we have. Okay, so how we work together. They do get on, starters and field events, honest field judges. So for example, we work in our own little bubbles quite a lot of the time. So field judges all work together and huddle together and chat together, and track judges go and stand on the stand during the day. But we have to engage with them. We have to have communication with them to make sure we have an efficient running of an event. So for example, if I was in charge of the hammer and the 1500 meters was about to start, I'd want to make sure I'm communicating with the start team to say, look, we're about to have someone throwing some big heavy weights out here. Can we make sure that you're facing or you're in a safe zone when we throw? we won't arrange a throw to take place while you're just got the gun in the air and about to start. So we need to communicate with people so we can have an efficient running of the event and make sure that if we've got an event of the shot, which is right near the 100-meter start, we're conscious of the starts going off and not disturbing the start. But starters similarly need to understand that we still need to get on with our event and get them through. So we need to have that regular engagement and communication with each other. Photo finish and track judges. Again, Alison, if you want to open up, you're qualified in both, but you can't exist without talking to each other, can you?
No, I got to talk to each other. Got to talk to start, even talk to field sometimes.
How would you talk to what sort of, why would you talk to the track judges or starts?
If we've got a problem and we need them to delay.
Yeah.
If we're looking down the track, say it's 100 meters, we're expecting 8 and we can only see 6. We want to know confirmation of who's not there. Yes, I can see lane 7's empty, but I need them to tell me that the guy who should be in lane 7 is not there and hasn't jumped into lane 6, because that can cause havoc. If they DQ anybody for full start, this is where I get very picky, because yes, I've seen the guy walk, but they've got to tell me. And more to the point, they've got to give me the rule number. And with the trackies, same things. I want to know if anyone's dropped out, anyone's not starting, what the finishing order is, anybody been DQ'd, anybody got a lane infringement. And then I'll tell them if they got the result right.
Yep. Just going back to the starters and field events, the other one that quite often happens, and it's liaising with the track judges and track referees probably as well. If we've got 400 meters about to start and we've got a javelin at that end of the arena and then they've got a long run up, we want to make sure that nobody's about to start when someone's running with a long spiky object in front of them. So we coordinate the start of that 400 with athletes with the javelin. What becomes more difficult sometimes is if we've got a 3,000 meter race going on and some of the javelin, but we just need to make sure we've got our eyes and ears everywhere to keep aware of the safety and make sure that nobody's going to get injured. Quite often do other things by radios. So quite often we have to liaise with the announcers. It might be the person in charge of each event may have to liaise with the announcer if they've got a radio to tell them that we're about to start or we're going to be 5 minutes late because of X. The competition director may take responsibility for that if they're there. But also we've got this, we're ready to go in 3 minutes. Are you ready to introduce all the athletes that are going to be competing in this 100 meters or in the shot put or the hammer? So we use radios rather than having to run around the field all the time, trying to track people down. If there's some equipment missing from the tech team, we can radio through to them saying, look, we need another couple of 3K shots because more athletes have turned up than we thought we were going to have. So we need to work with the technical team as well to make sure that all of their, they know what's going on. And if there's anything that's missing or broken, we can get hold of people very quickly. So sometimes we have different radio channels for different teams to make sure we're not speaking over each other. And there's a whole nother webinar on radio etiquette. But if you want to progress and you want to learn more Radio, look out. I'm sure there's been something recorded or online before about radio etiquette. But also combined events. I mentioned combined events. So obviously combined events involves track and field. So, and we need to make sure we're coordinating between them and making sure we've got the times between events, that they get the right rest between events. And letting the track team know that actually we're going to have to delay that race because we've still got pole vaulters going on. So we just need to make sure we work together. And quite often on a combined events, we might have some field judges doing some track judging, or the track judges, if it's just a combined events, we use them in the field because there's long gaps in the programme where they're not actually doing any track judging because there are no events. So we utilise each other's officials sometimes to help out and plug some gaps, as there always are on volunteer officials.
So can I just throw another one in?
Okay.
Yeah, for track and field working together, because you said about the 3K and the javelin on a 400. But the other one, which in my experience quite often gets forgotten about, is if the javelin runway crosses the steeplechase and by the water jump, and you've invariably got shoes or whatever being used as markers, especially at league meetings, and people are not aware that that area of the track is suddenly going to become live, and they're going to need to move their run-up markers and put tape down or something instead of leaving a shoe where a steeplechase is going to trip over it. So it's just that coordination as well, just to make sure that the field team are aware that in 5 minutes or so, that bit of track is going to go live. So move your bags and change your markers.
I think that sort of reiterates the point that we can't work in our disciplines in isolation. We do need to speak to the others. They're not as nice as our own discipline, obviously, and we don't get on with them as nice. And, you know, they're very strange, some of these people. Only joking. It's a case of we can't just work as fields and never engage with any other disciplines. But as you progress up the officiating ladder, learning about those other disciplines, understanding their way of working, and what challenges they had and what their duties are, really helps you as you step into some of those more senior referee roles, management roles. My own personal journey, I was a field official for many, many years, 20 odd years, and then I thought, oh, I am qualified as a level 2 in track. I'm also qualified as starter's assistant level 1. I've done a photo finish course, just haven't got there yet because COVID happened when I did it. But actually having an understanding of how it all interconnects. And personally, for me, taking on the role of competition director, you have to know how everyone else works. Quite often when you're refereeing, you need to know and understand all the other disciplines. So if you get the opportunity to try something else and work in a different team, go and spend a session in a call room, go and have a go at registration, seeding. It gives you the bigger understanding of how an athletics event happens and all the pieces, the cogs in the wheel that make it happen. And as Alison said, the bits that from a field, looking at a field event, you might not think, oh, I need to think about what's happening on the track, or I may need to think about what's happening elsewhere, because it is going to impact on my event. So we all need to work together. And my final bit of advice, and I'm early, so we've got time for questions. It's sort of something I say on most courses I do, is treat every day as a school day. Never, ever be afraid to ask questions. It's the only way you're going to continue to learn. And there is no such thing as a stupid question. And I've said at the start, I've just sort of gone up to, got another qualification. I have asked questions and questions and questions, and you're never too old. You know, got a colleague in Wales, Dave Jessett, who is a very high level para official. You know, I'll ring him up. I emailed him today about something because I think I know the answer, but actually he knows, he will definitely know the answer. So that use that network around you. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And if someone sort of blanked you and said, oh, you should know that, go and ask someone else. You should always, I think there's a phrase, put the ladder down to the people coming up behind you and help them on their own journey, so that they can also be much better officials and much better informed. So based on that, asking stupid questions, now is the time for those stupid questions. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and open the floor.
So can I ask a question?
Who's up? Right,
It's Tim Palmer.
what's your background? Where are you from and what's your discipline? Just out of interest.
I'm a level 3 track judge, level 1 field.
Go ahead.
What was your role at the Commonwealth Games? Because I was a volunteer there and saw you a lot at the entrance gates, the big doors.
Yeah, interesting question, because I haven't covered that role in this presentation. It's not some. My official title was National Technical Delegate. That does not exist in this rule book. That job title does not exist in this rule book. If you look in his rule book, the closest match to it is called a marshal. But my role was coordinating entry and exit from the field of play from officials, athletes, technical providers, media, medal presentations, and determining when someone could go out, when they couldn't go out, which way they went, how quickly they went, and the direction they went. So I was basically the gatekeeper. And I was liaising with the competition manager. So I'd sort of say, look, we've got officials that need to go to the start of the 200. I've got a medal presentation in 3 minutes. Can I let them go now, even though there's something else on the track and television don't really want people in the background, but I need to get them out? Yes, you can, or wait 30 seconds. And so that was kind of the way it worked, is that at that kind of level of meeting, it's not just getting people and bodies out, it's the media has a massive role to play in terms of them not wanting to see officials walking around the bend when they've got a 200-meter running past them, not wanting officials sort of right by the side of the track so they walk behind next to barriers. So yeah, and then a classic example, one discipline, is there anyone here from race walking? Race walking was in the stadium, and the lead official, Alison will know, because on some of the others that I was telling people, don't go now, whatever. And I said to the lead on the walks, said, don't go until I tell you to go. The individual thought they knew, I can go, nothing stopping me going. They walked out and walked straight into the military who were returning from a medal presentation, and had to hide behind a barrier and move and duck down until that medal presentation came. Those military people marched back in. Next race walk, a day later, I said, can you just hold there? Guess what? He waited. So my role, technical.
The officials who are acting as the secretaries for the race walks, we were trained because we'd got past you a few times already, been let in and let out. So we waited, let him make the mistake.
Yeah. But national technical delegate is, the idea is sort of to oversee the field of play, because you've got the competition director up in the stand radioing to all the officials to tell them, start your throws, start your warm up, this, that, and the other. Yes, race can go. I'm the eyes on the ground because I've got all the seats coming out. But yeah, as I said, if you read the description of Marshall in there, whatever page that was, that's more or less what it was.
Okay, fine, thanks. I obviously followed in a volunteer team rather than put out hurdles and blocks, and so somebody else had asked you permission to go out.
Tech team, yeah, those.
Yes, yeah.
How do you get 8 rows of 10 hurdles in 3 minutes? Have we got time to get all those hurdles in before the medal presentation is going to happen? So it's that kind of judgment call. Any questions? Are there other questions?
I just wanted to say, I put in the chat the radio protocol webinar that we did in 2020. So if anyone wants more information on using radios, I put that in there. And I've also put the link to Steve Marshall's website. There was a few other points in the chat. Alison mentioned chief photo finisher, not referee, because photo finish does not disqualify anyone except for guides ahead of athletes or give conduct warnings. But the chief photo finish makes all the calls about close decisions. So if there was any questions for Alison, I guess, around that.
Same would be for timekeepers. The chief timekeeper basically has oversight and manages the team of who takes which times and when. Any other questions? For me, there's a very important one. Was that what you thought you were coming to? Because it's quite difficult when you've got sort of some trainees right through to level 4s to know how to pitch it. So if there's anything that you think I've just glossed over or I've given you too much information, feedback to your home country, so Zoe in Wales, or anyone else, about anything else that you'd like more information on and to learn, you know, do a bit more in-depth understanding of certain roles. Or I know tech manager, there's loads that you could go into.
I think just Tim said another key one for communication was between starters and track judges on the 4x1, and starters to timekeepers before each start as well. So that was everything in the chat.